Hello.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maya Stark. I am one of the exhibitions coordinators for the Saskatchewan Craft Council. Welcome so much to our virtual artist talk tonight with the wonderful artist Julianna Zwierciadlowska-Rhymer. She is the solo artist responsible for the exhibition in our gallery right now called Guilty Pleasures. This exhibition of ceramic works and textile pieces is available to be seen in our gallery in Saskatoon until January 17th. I just want to take a second to thank our sponsors, Creative Sask and the City of Saskatoon. For those who aren't aware of our main funder, Creative Saskatchewan, they are a funding body devoted to artists in Saskatchewan. One thing that's coming up with them that I think a lot of the audience might be interested in is a craft and visual arts grant. The deadline is February 11th. That is a new deadline. So if you were thinking about checking it out, it's a great what you can do. Artists, get that money. Uh, Lastly, I would like to just note that I'm joining you from Saskatoon in Treaty 6 territory. All I want to say, I don't want to take up all the airspace because Juliana is here to talk about her work and will do a wonderful job introducing herself. Thank you so much for being here. We are so grateful that you can share your practice with us and that we have your wonderful work in the gallery. So I'm going to hide myself, and Juliana, you can take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. As mentioned, my name is Julianna Zwierciadlowska-Rhymer, and I am a ceramic artist based in Manitoba. Before we start tonight, I'd like just to take a moment also to acknowledge and thank some of the organizations that have helped me get here to complete the work for this show. So I'd like to first thank Medalta International Artist in Residency Program. I attended earlier this year in January and completed many of the works there, as well as a workshop I did at Medalta with Jocelyn Reed, which helped me really hone in on my mold making skills, as well as the Manitoba Arts Council, which helped fund some of these activities and the making of this work. And of course, to the Saskatchewan Craft Council for choosing me as the out-of-province artist to showcase Guilty Pleasures. Everyone at the council has been so incredibly helpful and kind and absolutely wonderful to work with. So thank you all so very much. And start off this talk, I'm going to provide some background information about myself, what's influenced my art practice, and also the art itself. So here we have, this is a photo of the farm I grew up in southern Manitoba, and I lived here until my young adulthood. This is the place that has informed me so much about growing food, how it's grown, lots of the food production, all the work involved, and understanding where our food is from. It gave me this really great understanding of more of like the behind the scenes of our food production on a very small scale. We had, growing up, lots of fruits and vegetables that we grew that would last us about the year or so. And I also think I took a lot of this for granted as a child and even into my young adulthood, thinking this was normal and this is how lots of people grew food and ate, but not until later on, and I'd go to other people's homes and travel, that I would realize this is very different and people didn't always eat this way. Another large influence for me is my parents' professions. My mom is a pharmacist and my dad is a grain farmer. And it wouldn't be until I was own interest and a much better understanding of how intertwined these two worlds really are. We would have many conversations about how one egg company would buy up another, or how one pharmaceutical company was merging with another, and also how then these two different companies could merge together and what that would mean for us. And the more I would listen to my parents and understand about their professions, I understand like how one company could now, they could have the supplies for our seeds and for our chemicals used on those crops, but also the pharmaceuticals we possibly need for our own health. And I began to question more about, what does this mean for us? Is this good or is it bad? And what do these implications mean for us and for our food systems? My garden has been a huge inspiration for me as well, thinking about all of these aspects about our food supply and seeds and the chemicals used. My garden has been this place where I can think about and contemplate these ideas and also a space where I can take my own seeds and grow the produce that we want to eat. And then I have this great understanding of what is in the soil, what can I do to the plants, what am I doing, and seeing this kind of all full circle moment of the food that we consume. And I think it's given me such a great perspective and understanding of the many steps of how the food gets to my plate. This here is a photo taken in a market in Krakow, Poland. I lived here for a year, and I've also lived in Tallinn, Estonia on exchange. I believe for me, like living abroad and many of my travels predominantly within Europe and a lot within Eastern Europe have definitely influenced my views on food. I would see how many different cultures interact with their food, how things were purchased, the questions that were being asked. For me, it felt like the people were more curious about what they were eating, having just a greater understanding of what they ate and where it came from. I was also very fascinated by how food is presented. So you can see that here, different things are like still intact, like in their original form. There's still feet on the chicken. I remember buying some meat there, some chickens that still has feathers on them. It always felt to me that things were very fresh. I remember like asking sometimes like it would have been butchered that morning or the day before. And it just felt so different than what I was experiencing back at home. And these types of moments and images definitely stuck with me. And throughout many of my travels, I remember seeing lots of vendors that would be selling different types of entrails, so such as like hearts and feet and intestines and what we might consider in the West to be more undesirable types of meat or something that we might discard. But within other cultures, these cuts could be part of like their cultural and historical dishes and how they would use more of an animal than possibly we would, and that possibly less would go to waste. So these are just parts of the things that have always stuck out with me and it's definitely impacted how I think about food and the things I want to say within my practice. And I would also say that these might be things we do see at home, but I never felt like it would, as I could see in other places I have traveled to. So with all of these life experiences and travels, my cow udder cakes were born. I came to creating these pieces in my final semester when I was attending Emily Carr University of Emily Carr University, and I was doing this in my undergrad. I had just come back from my exchange in Estonia, and I felt so inspired by their food culture and their knowledge, but I also felt so jaded about ours. And I saw this connection that the Estonians had to their food and how proud they were of most of their food, especially their pride with their dairy products that really stood out to me. With all these different elements combined, it inspired this series, as well as living in Vancouver. And I was working in a restaurant for part of the time, and I observed this relationship that people had sometimes with the labels of their foods, so such as natural and organic and free range and what those would mean. And sometimes I felt that those labels were more important than maybe actually understanding where their food came from or what was in it. And so thinking about these terms, I start to think about dairy products and what does natural mean? And is it natural for us to drink milk that is intended for a calf? And if we want to drink something that's natural, shouldn't we drink our mother's breast milk? And that conversation sometimes made people feel very uncomfortable. And I knew that was something that for me, I wanted to like figure out like, why do people feel this way? Or there was something brewing there. And that also made me think of like the taboo of food and why some people are okay with eating a certain animal and others aren't, or what we find gross and disgusting. And why is it that we can think that or put our nose up to something and other people or other cultures are okay with eating this? So just what all of these different ideas mean and how we perceive food. And so with my cow udder cakes, these have definitely evolved over time. I've been working on them for a while, and I still have many ideas about them. They have now become more elaborate and enticing and ornate. And I think that they will continue in my practice and possibly take different forms and possibly other mediums. But they've always sort of revolved around cake. And I love using cakes and desserts. And for me, cake is the vehicle that I can that to discuss more controversial and complex ideas about our food systems. Cakes are something that we all know and we love, and they can be at celebratory events from graduations and weddings to even funerals. They bring us joy and are this like moment of comfort, but can also be associated to moments of happiness. And yet at the same time, they can be part of our own guilty pleasures when we possibly know we ought to practice restraint. And too much of any item of food may not always be the best for us. And I create these sculptures that balance this line of beauty and the grotesque. I use pinks and these soft pastel colors to draw the viewer in. And I think these colors are typically seen as delicate and feminine and non-threatening, yet at the same time to be associated with something that can be grotesque, possible sickness, entrails, and our own inner selves. And I'm interested in the different perspectives and associations that these colors have as the viewer may perceive them. And for myself, I also love these ideas of hospitality and feeding people and making them feel special when they come over to eat, or bringing delicious items over for an event. And oftentimes for me, these also are desserts. So within my practice, I have found that I am allowed to bring all my passions together to create these works that present and question ideas around our food, our consumption habits, and our own gluttony. This now is part of the work that I have at the Saskatchewan Craft Council. So as you enter into the gallery space, you are greeted with a long dinner table in front of you. There's this overwhelming amount of cakes and desserts on the table, and they are beautifully presented. The viewer is innocently drawn into the installation, but quickly realizes that what they're seeing is something much more sinister and this darker side of a narrative in front of them. The table has these two place settings, one at each end, and this intentionally for me makes one think about the guests who are about to devour everything in front of them. And it's this like sickening amount of food. And for me, some of this also stems from ideas of like the mass food, typically more so the animal products that are in grocery stores, so the things that are in the fridges and freezers of like chicken wings and steaks and burgers, etc. And I think about how that is in this one store, and that one store is within a city multiple times, and all the other grocery chains that there are. So I just really take in all the food that we are consuming. And I also think about when we are going out to a restaurant, how we could be asked, do you want to supersize this or have an addition, or to start with an appetizer or finish with a dessert? And for me, I feel that it seems like we need more and that it's never enough. And sometimes I question that if, as a culture, do we understand the practice of restraint or knowing when enough is enough or when to say no, or does the food control us? So for me, this installation is also at first very overwhelming, and that is intentional, but I think that it also gives the viewer this moment to pause and question what it is that we're looking at without being force-fed more information about our food systems and the culture around that, and that we can have this moment to contemplate and to come to our own conclusions and possibly some of our own self-reflection. So throughout this exhibition, you'll see this variety of cakes and desserts on the table, with many of them using different molds of meat and like cuts of an animal, along with like teeth and intestines and corn and cauliflower, all these different motifs that we sometimes know and recognize. And I use the molds to remind the viewer of the animals that we consume. There are different cuts sometimes of meat that we eat that we may not recognize necessarily, or that we've kind of become like we don't really think about what it is that we're eating. And it's sometimes maybe unrecognizable from the animal. So for me, I'm trying to create molds and these desserts that we can recognize what it is that we're eating, and hopefully for us to become a little bit more mindful. So for this cake, I'm using these molds of chicken feet that I made, and they're kind of acting as birthday candles on this cake, so we recognize it as cake, but yet this juxtaposition of something kind of beautiful and grotesque at the same time. And I really enjoy playing on these ideas of drawing the viewer into something that we know is delicious and satisfying, yet at the same time we might be revolted by, and we're trying to make sense of what it is that we're looking at. The same can be sort of said for these cakes as well. They have different meat molds used for the pieces. So I've got like chicken nuggets and drumsticks in here as well, but then using these like really beautiful soft colors to draw the viewer in. And so they're beautiful, yet they have this sort of grotesque meat fantasy cake going on with them as well. And my art practice for me has led me to the abject and the grotesque. These are two themes that have been reoccurring within my art practice. They allow me to challenge cultural concepts and familiar narratives by provoking disgust and at the same time curiosity, and compelling the viewer to stay engaged and question possibly their initial assumptions. I think the abject and the grotesque can push boundaries and eliminate borders between what we consider normal and abnormal, or between the self and other. It destabilizes these norms in my work, engages the viewer in like a deeper reflection for our food sources and confront our own morals about food choices. And I think cake, for me, and within my art practice, breaks down these barriers further to question our own eating habits. And I think sometimes the food that we enjoy the most arrives on our plate by processes that we would rather not acknowledge. Here I have some of my chicken nugget cupcakes. These are a new addition to my work. They are cast from McDonald's chicken nuggets, and they are something that we recognize in shape, and we understand them to be chicken nuggets. And I use the gold as this play on the McDonald's arches, or the McDonald's golden arches, to elevate the nuggets that I'm using. The nuggets are these food items, I think, that also kind of have this power over us. They're indulgences, something that is can be eaten daily, either as a treat or as sustenance. They're something that we can crave, that we live for, or something that can control part of us, or something also that we are very revolted by as well. And we understand these to be chicken, but they're also up chicken, made into this mash, added with flavor enhancers, and then binders, and then shaped into this form that we know to be a nugget. And I find for me, this ties me back into these terms of like natural and what does that mean? And we understand this shape, but yet it's not natural. So what are we sort of eating? And then to use it on this cupcake that we kind of know and love, and they can be delicious. And what do these two things mean when they're placed on the same sculpture? And here again, I have some of these cakes that I've been making and working on now for a few years that are in these beautiful pastel colors, slip cast meat. We're looking at like, oh, it's something pretty and pink with icing. And then again, you see either chicken heads or there's steak and corn and other pieces that we're not quite sure what it is. And we can think that it's possibly uncomfortable or undesirable. With some of the cakes too, I have these heads that are puking. And this started with this idea that sometimes the food that we eat is making us sick, or possibly this lack of self-control, but also the food that we're eating can be so delicious that we can't stop eating it. And it's to the point where we feel ill. And I think many of us can say that we have felt both of these types of sensations, where we're at somebody's house or we're out and we're eating something that is so good that we can't stop ourselves, and then we end up feeling ill. So I enjoyed this blurred line between what is making us ill and it's between deliciousness. Oh, here we have my slip cast chicken that I've made in the show. These are cast from an actual chicken, and it was quite a process for me to make, but so exciting and challenging as well. I found this chicken while grocery shopping before I was headed to the Banff Centre for a residency. I found it so surprising to find this because it's not something that I think I would regularly find while shopping. And I thought I was like, I need to make this into something. I need to make this as a piece for my show or something. Wasn't quite sure what. So I bought it. And for me, when I think about chicken, it's either prepared as a dish, as in like a chicken breast or chicken salad sandwich or chicken soup or something like this, or this sort of like romanticized idea of a chicken that it's on a farm running around, but maybe not always this process in between of what actually happens to the animals that we eat and and our consumption of them. So I want to create this piece of the realities of meat and how we eat them, or the realities of the meat that we eat. So for this piece too, like I had this idea that I would cast these and have them hung on meat hooks as if they were like in a slaughterhouse or this industrial space that maybe we're not meant to see or that we don't want to see, because sometimes that understanding of that that process is too harsh, or we want to shy away from it because it can be a difficult reality to understand, and we know that the outcome can be something we want to consume and can be delicious, but that in between stage is not the thing that we want to always think about when it comes to our food. I have these heads hanging in the gallery. For me, these are still pieces that I'm working on. This are like works in progress, and they've been really fun to make, and I'm still thinking about like always what they mean. And so far, I've been thinking a lot about like post-humanism, food and consumption. And I'm very curious about the intersection of food and humans and creating these like hybrid creatures. And I've been thinking about, are we becoming the food that we're eating? Is it taking over us and our bodies? What are the foods that we are consuming doing to us? Are they making us more sick or healthy? And I guess this also depends on our individual diets and how much do we truly have control over that. These are three of them that are a combination or this hybrid between a human and a hog, and that we are becoming the meat that we're eating. And I think about, if we are what we eat, then we are what we eats too. So I've been thinking like, meaning if the hogs or the cattle or the chicken that we eat are also fed antibiotics or growth hormones or soy or corn or whatever it is that they are eating, how are we becoming those things as well? And how do those things affect us? And I'm curious about this border, these blurred lines of where does one end and one begins, and if this is really affecting us, or how this is affecting us, and are we the guinea pigs for this? Do we understand what all of this sort of means for us and our consumption habits? And I've been thinking about like rethinking meat, such as reconsidering the ethics of eating meat, lab-grown meat, fake meat. What do these new technologies mean, and what does it mean to like create these, and what do they mean for us, and how does it affect our overall health? And also within the show, I've got these, I've got a few textile pieces, and then so they are a step away from ceramics, but they are also like similar in theme and ideas as well. So this piece was created during COVID, when I was in our initial lockdown. I was still in grad school, but I still needed to complete my elective courses for my degree. And so textiles is sort of a natural move for me. And it's something I've always wanted to do more of. This is a tapestry that I created out of fleece, and it has these chicken drumsticks acting as a border with these dead dancing chickens in the center, as well as this like plethora of antibiotic pills set as the reminder of antibiotic use in the animals that we consume. And I often think about, or I use this soft, comforting fabric that we use that would be like so comforting to wrap yourself up in, and it'd be cozy, but yet at the same time, we probably feel like we don't want to wrap ourselves up in that because of the type of imagery that is on there. And on this side, I have embroidered "unknown side effects may occur," referencing the overuse of antibiotics. And do we actually understand what the side effects could be? And sometimes this is a term that we also hear within the pharmaceutical industry or medical industry. We may know a great deal about the, the pharmaceuticals that are being used, but we may not always know all of the final outcomes. So I've really enjoyed like playing with these ideas and making things that are like very comforting or cute or welcoming, and then at the same time we feel slightly uncomfortable or not sure what our emotions are reacting to it. And lastly, I've got these two photographs that are in the show. This is me in this cow udder sweater that I created, holding this large meat pillow in this like idyllic prairie setting that many of us know and understand. And we know that this is where a lot of our food is grown and raised. But at the same time, I'm creating something that's kind of absolutely ridiculous and comical in a way. And I think I use humor within my work. I believe it can help me to disarm the viewer, and we can point out and laugh about some of the absurdities within our food system in a way that we may not be able to do without being able to like laugh about some of these things. I think humor can also help to encourage us to think more critically and open up about different ideas without becoming defensive or feeling threatened. Um, Here I am again in the same costume and meat pillow, but this time just against this straw bale wall. Again, it's this other like iconic prairie farm setting, reminders of where our food comes from, but without being jarring. And I think, again, humor within my art practice can like break down these barriers and expose the truths about what it is that we're eating. It gives us a safe space to think critically about our food choices without feeling threatened or blamed, and possibly seeing the other side of a narrative. And so, with all of this said, I really hope that my artwork and my art practice can create a sense of curiosity and the ability to open up conversations and learn from one another. Food connects all of us. And I think the more that we talk about it and learn from each other, the more that I think we can have a positive change on our food system. So that's all I have to say for this evening. Thank you all so very much for attending. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. So thank you all again.
Thank you so much. We have time for a Q&A. We do
Okay.
have some questions that came in from YouTube. So people in the chat, if you have some questions for Julianna, feel free to put them into the YouTube chat. And I'm going to ask them in the order we've received them. Our very first question was from early in your slideshow from Andrew. Great installation on the hay bale. Is that from your final show at Emily Carr?
No, that was also made during COVID. Um, that was made, I think, my last semester, just like around that time. That timeline also feels like a big blur because we were in and out of school and lockdowns. That was made, yes, like I think 2021 in some code red in Manitoba. And I had to get my mom to help me photograph it because we weren't allowed to have anybody near us. And so that was near our farm, and they were finishing up baling the crops or some of the crops, and there were these gigantic straw bale walls. I just found fascinating. Like I need to do something with that because they're huge. So that was, yeah, that was the 2021 era, maybe shortly after graduation. I can't exactly remember, but around that time.
Gotcha.
Not those, yeah, they weren't made at Emily Carr. They were Manitoba made pieces. Yeah.
Right. And I might have accidentally um, miscommunicated that. I think Andrew's talking about the early
Oh,
photo in the
oh,
gallery with
yes.
the hay
Oh,
bale.
sorry. Yes. Oh, that one. Okay. Yes. Because I also
Yeah.
have, yes, the cow udder with the cow udder sweater. Yes. That was made at Emily Carr at my final semester. And that was using then straw bales. I've like learned a lot too about like, yeah, straw and hay bales, and having that and the scent of the straw like permeated the gallery so everybody could smell it as well, which I found really interesting because there was like two of us who had scent in our artwork. And I think that smell of straw also is nostalgic to people, even if you don't grow up smelling it, it's like you kind of know this is a farm and this is where like food could be coming from. Or there's something nostalgic, I think, about it. But that was
Yeah.
the very beginning of the cow udders, yes, at Emily Carr last semester, and then kind of stuck. I've kind of been like really interested in that subject matter ever since.
Yeah. I love the idea of incorporating the hay and the straw into your work. Yeah, I think it has this very like sort of primordial earthy smell that I think you
Hmm.
can connect to. Yeah, like you say, even if you haven't been to a farm. Yeah, fantastic. We had a question from Leah. So she says, a lot of people visiting the gallery have asked us about the pill capsules and how they relate to the work. Can you tell us more about them?
Yes. So those I started thinking a lot about like the use of antibiotics within like the animals that we eat, so within the livestock and how they are fed antibiotics, and thinking about if we are what we eat, then are we also eating these? And then when I've talked to my mom and some of her like pharmacy friends and even my own doctor and like the overuse sometimes of antibiotics and how that is affecting us and how there can be like the overuse of antibiotics and what does that mean for viruses and for things to spread and like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be using as many of these. So I've created them. They're all gold on the table. There are like these gelatin capsules that I got and I spray painted them gold. They sort of like look as like something playful that we could use all the time, or like eat them. They're almost like candy. Sometimes I've thought about them as, and yet there's like this danger side to them, like the overconsumption of them. Like what does that mean for our health? What are the implications of that? So, and I think about like the Rococo and era and the Baroque era and like this overabundance of gold and just this exuberance of luxury and having that kind of like pull you in for the table to the table. But there's also like this darker side to them, like maybe consuming them isn't what's best for us.
Yeah, and something I've become a bit more aware of since your installation because I've been thinking more about like food systems and politics. So it's working. Your art practice is working. We're
Thank
thinking
you.
about these things. But one thing I've become more aware of is how sometimes treatment of with antibiotics is sort of a more a trade-in for animal welfare.
Hmm.
So, rather than having clean pens and good healthy practices for animals, just more antibiotics. So
Yes.
you're not preventing disease and infection, you're simply treating it en masse. So that's
Yes.
another
And
challenge with this overuse.
yes, that's exactly, yes, you hit that right on the head. Like I thought about that a lot as well, and how instead of taking care of things in a different way, this is how we're going about it. And it's like, this isn't also great either for us. And what are those implications? So
Mhm.
yes, there's I think a lot always to talk about within food and how like everybody has a different perspective. And it's really great to talk to people and see what they have to say and hear all of the different narratives.
Yeah. All right. Another question. This is from Val Weeb. She asks, did the idea of let them eat cake factor at all into your inspiration?
Not at first, but I think a lot of people have like kind of said that as well. And I find it also like it's a fun way of approaching things as well. Like that is a fun thing, but it's not necessarily what was a first inspiration. I think the cakes kind of came because I loved baking cakes and I wanted to figure out how can I like make cake or do something, or the idea is also hospitality and make some artworks. And I think also a deadline. Having a deadline in school really is jumpstarts you for some inspo.
Yeah, it
But
can
no,
really fuel a practice when you have a big deadline.
yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting though that that question came up and you were just talking about the Baroque and Rococo and
Hmm.
these like ages of excess and how we do have this age of excess, but the
Yes,
kinds of excess we're seeing are different, right?
yes, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think it exists, like the more I've like done research, that it exists in so many time periods and how what we view as of excess as well. Like it can be seen as, yes, different things at different periods and or how it's presented to us. But yes, the Marie Antoinette different things like that, like the movie that came out about her, that's been referenced to me, and I've watched it, and it is like beautiful and kind of uneasy in a way to make you feel these different emotions around food.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and we have a question from Paula. Juliana, can you talk about the surfaces of your animal heads that are hanging on the wall? They appear to be soda fired, but how are you getting the gold effects? Lusters post firing, gold paint?
Oh
Can you
yeah.
tell us about that
So
process?
the most of the pieces that are on the wall, those are all soda fired. They're all porcelain, soda fired, dipped in a flashing slip to give them this like radiant, kind of like almost like metallic-y kind of finish, like iridescent kind of finish. And the gold is all gold luster on those, premium gold luster, the good stuff. And that gold luster gives it this beautiful shine. So that is the final firing. So it's painted on. It's a toxic material, so respirator and well ventilated area, and then it's painted and it's fired again, and then it comes out with the beautiful gold finish. And I think the gold luster is on many of the pieces throughout the show as well. So you can find like these little sparkling, glimmering pieces on many of the sculptures.
Great. And I have a question about those wall pieces as well. In some of those pieces, I can see that you're using casting and then there's hand
Mm-hmm.
building. And
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes when you look inside the eyes or the mouth of these little faces, you can see tiny skulls or
Yeah.
cupcake icing mounds
Mm-hmm.
inside of the skull. How are you building those?
They are first, I make like the slab for the base, and then I've made then the outer exterior of the face as well. So there's the base, and then I kind of put them together to see like where the outline is, trace out the outline on the base, and then I kind of start placing things, and then I put it back on. So it's a matter of like taking the out the exterior face, putting it on, taking it off, and placing those little skulls. And once those are placed, then I pipe the icing, and then I slip and score them, attach them, and then I'll start building on the exterior. So those ones are a bit of a process, but like I love this meticulous work as well. All the highly detailed stuff. I love making those. So it's just thinking about where the holes are for the eyes or the mouth or whatever, and then kind of just a game of trial and error.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I encourage everyone here to go see those in person if they can. They're highly meticulous. I'm really impressed by just how finely they're done. You're not accidentally denting, there's no fingerprints or nail presses. Everything is just very delicately controlled. It's very controlled work and it's very
Yes,
beautiful.
I thank you. I love, yes, like the highly detailed stuff, and I love the idea too where like you're looking at it at first and then you see something else like on the inside, and it causes you to look further and like, oh, there is something on the inside, or there's always more that draws the viewer around to keep you engaged.
And your table installation is like that too. We've had repeat visitors to the gallery who say, "Oh, I see something different this time." There's just a constant investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And was that
Yeah,
something you wanted for people to spend more time with the work?
I think so. Like, because I know that's also work that I really enjoy, is to keep my eye engaged and to keep me wondering, like, what is this? Like, what am I looking at? And oh, I didn't see that the first time. And I think I love that, like the curiosity that comes with that. So to have this mass amount of stuff on the table of like my little Oreo kind of cookies with teeth and icing to like little macaroons and the icing droplets and all the cupcakes and even some of the like there's a cake stand with teeth. So the first time around you don't pick up on everything, and then as you're walking around you see different like little text on a cupcake, and you're like, oh, what does that mean? Like what, like to look at all these things and find more. And I think it just gives us this time to think about what it is that we're eating and the consumption habits that we have and the gluttony that exists within our society and culture and overabundance of food. So yes, I think that for me is definitely very intentional to keep you very occupied and busy looking at everything that's there.
Great. It looks like we have a few more questions.
Okay.
Um, Sid asks, some people online and in the gallery seem to react defensively and emotionally to your work. It seems
Mm.
that rather than casting judgment, you are asking people to just stop and think about these subjects. How do you respond to these reactions?
Um, I know I've gotten sometimes, yes, some negative feedback about certain things, but I think a reaction, like I want there to be a reaction, and I can also understand that myself because I think at one point I could have had that same reaction if it's like, oh, I can't believe that you're casting meat, and but I think about it as like I want to make a statement about the food that we're eating as a larger food system. It's not about just an individual and pointing the finger at them. I think it's thinking about the larger system at hand and how can we make a change there instead, or how can we possibly think differently about the food. I know, like when I cast some, like when I cast the chicken, yes, I am very excited about the result that happened and all the work that it took to make it. But I also think about like making that mold was a difficult process, and I had to kind of remove myself for that moment, be like, this is an object that I'm casting, and I know as one individual, I'm not um, making a huge impact on the world. Like it is a bigger corporation at hand that is doing more damage, let's say, than good, or that there could be more food waste because of them, or whatever that aspect is for people. As one artist, I want to draw more attention to this, and I'm hoping that it does. And I'm hoping something like a reaction is what we need. I think if you walk past an art piece and you just think whatever, or it doesn't give you like a love hate or something, that I don't feel like I've done my job as an artist. I want there to be a strong emotional reaction, whether that's a curiosity or that you love it or you don't like it. I think those are important emotions to have about artwork, because I know I feel the most when I'm like, oh, I really don't like that. But then as soon as like, why don't I like that? Or I love this piece. Why? What is making me like drawn to it? So I think I'm okay with also people not liking it. I know it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
Fair. All right. And now we have a technical question. Again,
Okay.
another technical question from Paula. What is the piped icing made of? Is it slip, a special combination of clay and chemicals? Are you actually piping them with cake decorating tools? Paula, that's like 7 questions, but that's okay. It's allowed.
It's okay. It is with clay and some Darvan that is added in. So it's a clay with a bit of water. So I usually dry out a lot of my clay, and then I'll slowly add some water in, and I blend it, and then I'll add in like it's always like this a little bit of water, and then Darvan is to help suspend the clay particles so that it's not too watery. It acts wetter than it is, and so it allows me to pipe, because if there's too much water, the clay will possibly crack. And I am using piping tools. I've got piping bags, lots of piping tips. I'm always trying out different ones. Um, and have to get the clay to like a right consistency. So sometimes it is a bit of trial and error and figuring out how to pipe. And I've noticed that piping, sometimes with different tips, I need a like slightly thinner. If it's a really thin tip, like I'm trying to do text, I want it actually to be a little bit more on the wet side, so it comes through the piping bag really nice and smooth. And sometimes I want it thicker, depending on if I'm depends on what it is that I'm actually trying to pipe. Sometimes I'm like, actually, I've made some things that are going up, so I need it to be really sturdy. But and I watch a lot of cake piping videos on how to do things. Like like how do they do this? It looks so nice, but I don't want it to be perfect like cake. I want it to be also like a little bit messy. Like this cake is kind of put together, like it's just holding together with the icing. That it's not a perfect cake. It's a meat cake. Like it's not. Yes, I do watch a lot of videos. And like, wow, this is amazing what people can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I love hearing about all these tiny important details about the way you want it to behave, and this is the way you control it. Um, because I think that's just one of the great things about hearing from the artist is getting to know how well they know their material. It's very satisfying to hear. So thank you for that. Um, Oh, a question about the title of the show. I also had this question. What does the exhibition title mean for you? And maybe in particular, the word guilty.
I think that like sometimes like the foods that we are eating that we enjoy so much that they're we don't always think of like this process in between of like how it actually got to our plate. Or sometimes we do, we understand that, but we don't want to admit that to ourselves. Like we do feel this sense of possible guilt. Like if we are eating, I don't know, it could be a chicken salad sandwich, it could be a steak, and that we understand what is actually happening to the animals, but we don't want to admit that. We feel guilty, but we also feel this immense amount of pleasure when we're eating said item. So I think I've thought about the title a lot. There's so many other titles too that I've used in the past and that I enjoy, and I think about like what these words mean or how I feel about when I'm eating food. And sometimes like we all have that kind of item of like, I don't know, like I love chocolate. And so I'm like eating so much and like, oh no, like I know this isn't good for me. And you kind of feel possibly like ashamed of yourself in a way, or like embarrassed that we've eaten so much. But then at the same time, like, but it was so delicious. It was so, was it so worth it? Maybe, maybe not. But that idea of the food that we're eating isn't always say what's best for us, or we know mentally it's not what we should be consuming, or maybe we should be making maybe better ethical or moral choices, but we can't always do that, or we don't have that self control. So I think
Yeah.
a lot about like those those things and how they go together, and maybe the guilt that we feel with any of the foods that we eat, whether it's good or bad for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like the guilt, the pleasure, it's
Hmm.
um it's the juxtaposition that is also happening in your artwork. So that makes
Hmm.
sense. And I appreciate how you've talked about food being joyful and cultural and ritual and a way to like share experiences with friends and family. And it's for us. Like we should take pleasure in food, but there
Yeah.
is this dark side to it, the corporatization, the excessiveness, the way that food is branded towards us, you know? Like, do we need to be eating meat 3 times a day? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But there's this idea that you have eggs and bacon for breakfast and a meat sandwich
Hmm.
for lunch, and then you have, I don't know, meatballs and pasta for that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
those are all things that like I am always like thinking about too, and like how to bring this into my practice and how to simply just like present these ideas. I don't want to say I'm pointing out at anybody, but I'm like, this is something that we do as a culture. Like maybe we need to just like rethink things or re-examine something. And I think food also it connects all of us. And it's when we like talk to people, like I think we become very defensive because it's a part of our identity. It's part of our history and our culture and how we're raised. And I think there's a way to discuss things without becoming defensive. Like if over a meal is something like, if it's there's delicious food in front of us, like we can all sit and talk about it as well. And I think it can be like this like tipping point or a breaking point for us to be able to talk a bit more without becoming defensive or upset. And I think there's lots of space and there's lots of room for these discussions to happen, and hopefully like for us maybe just to, you don't change our minds completely, but that you just maybe have a different idea or a different approach to something, or you think about
yeah.
it a little bit differently.
Yeah, more thoughtful relationship to
Yeah.
food. Um, we had a more of a comment than a question from Leah.
Okay.
Leah, she says, I have found that people who do react offensively or are put off by the work are just as open to engaging in conversations around the subject matter, which is very much what you
Hmm.
were just talking about. But yeah, yeah, I have seen that too. People walk in and maybe they feel a little like, oh, my uncle is works with cows and
Hmm.
you need antibiotics or whatever. I think typically they're open to talking about how it's not against the practice of agricultural farming. It's
Yeah.
about the way it's being performed right now.
Yes.
It's a problem.
And I think a lot about like my dad and how he farms, or he did farm. He's retired now, but like how much farming changed within his lifetime. And like then when he retired, for him it was either like you go big and farm or you don't, because there's like no more middle ground. And I think like, yes, it's grain farming can be different than cattle ranching, but there's like similarities and crossovers. And I just, I really empathize with farmers as well, because sometimes they don't have as much choice as maybe we think that they do as people who don't farm. And there's so many things that maybe they don't have full control over, or they would like to do something differently, but possibly they can't, or like they also have bills to pay and lives that they like children they need to raise and things. So there's it's not an easy answer. It's very complicated. And I think we should keep those things in mind as well. And it's really important to like listen and hear what they have to say, because it can be a whole other world. And yes, we can point these things out, but it's to acknowledge what they know as well, and how they have to live their livelihoods. And it's not a straightforward answer.
Yeah, it's a deeply complex topic, and I think you're approaching it in this way that allows lots of conversation
Hmm.
and the engagement you create like with decoration and beauty, and then the
Hmm.
repulsiveness. Um, it's it's encouraging that discussion. Now we only have a few minutes left, so
Okay.
there's no more new questions in the chat. But my question for you then is, what are you doing next?
I'm probably going to continue making a lot of like, I think I'm going to scale back some of the bigger work, because not everybody wants to cow udder in their house. I know it sounds strange that people don't want that, but I think I'm going to still make some of the smaller work. Really enjoyed making my head series and thinking about like more about post-humanism and what is this intersection between our food and like technology in us. Um, and right now I'm thinking about like the things that we'll be making for this following year, like other functional work, um, smaller sculptural work, and probably doing some more art craft shows and sales. And just I also want to do some more textiles. I really love textiles and I've missed it. And ceramics has taken over so much time. For anybody who does ceramics, you know how time consuming it is. And it's like a child that never grows up. You always have to go check on it. Is the clay too wet? Can I trim my pot? So I think I'm always going to keep ceramics. It's always going to be the main practice, but I'd like to do some more textiles and kind of focus on maybe some tapestries. I'm not sure yet, but I've really enjoyed working in that medium. So the craft-based mediums are very close to me. So I'd like to try a bit more of that, keep making the artwork that I am. Um, I'm not exactly sure yet either. So it'll be a surprise too for me in a good way.
Great. That's fantastic. I want to see more wearables. I want to see an
Oh,
udder hat,
oh
Juliana.
my gosh.
Write
Yes,
that
I
down.
want to make, I've got my notebook. I want to make some kind of other wearables. That was such a fun thing to make. And I think it definitely made a lot of people have comments and questions and what's going on. So yeah,
For
I'll make,
sure.
I'll be doing some other fun stuff in the studio.
Thank you so much. Again, we really appreciate you sharing your practice with us and being so open to all the questions.
All right. Thank
Um,
you so much.
all right, no problem. And yeah, we just had such a great time installing with you when you were here. Um, just for those people who weren't here at the beginning with us, I just want to mention that Guilty Pleasures, the exhibition, is going to be at the Saskatchewan Craft Council until January 17th. That is your last day to see it. We do have closure between December 25th and January 4th, so please double check our website for our open days before you come check things out. Thank you to Creative Saskatchewan and the City of Saskatoon for those artists and artisans in the audience. The Craft and Visual Arts grant deadline with Creative Sask is coming up on February 11th. So just a reminder to all of you out there. Okay, I think we're all done. So thank you again. Really appreciate it. And I hope everyone in the chat can go see the exhibition.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.